my leadership is driven by really two things. One is, and I think we talked about this, is the idea of listening first. Because I am always more interested in understanding how anyone that I'm leading, and in the ways that I think of any kind of hierarchical relationship, it's really the idea that I am coach, I am mentor, I am coach. I have this person's best mind. I don't think of myself as a boss at all. And so I lead with listening, and I match my approach in a sort of a customized way to everyone that I am fortunate enough to lead, which is exactly like having many different children, different genders, different ages. You have to sort of listen first, be very humble about it, and define it in that way. The second thing is that I have one way that I coach people into sort of becoming the best of what they can do, unlocking their potential, is I don't offer advice until I've asked them. If they come to me with an issue, a question, a problem, I'd say, well, what are you thinking about that? How are you, tell me how you would solve that. What's on the top of your mind? And really, that's just letting them know they have the answer in themselves. They just sometimes need to be given an ear to sort of talk it through with someone else, or the confidence that they need to sort of unlock that. And very often, just little bits of guidance can help them get to the final answer. But usually I believe that the answer is inside of them.
Yeah.
Which is, less to do about the five sisters and much more to do about the sort of the parenting style, is that ultimately, and it's the heartbreak of parenting, because my oldest went off to college this past year, is that if you're really successful at parenting, then they don't need you anymore. They leave. They are their own person, and that's how you've gotten it right, when they are ready to fly, utterly self-sufficient. So, and that's my goal for everyone that I lead, is that ultimately they leapfrog into their own leadership.
Juliet, welcome to Empath-led. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here. I feel like it's a long time coming.
It is. I can't even remember now how we even got connected, but I'm sure it has something to do with the fact that we both had something around the empathy-led in our respective bios, and it just made sense for us to be connected.
Well, the algorithm working on behalf of the universe brought us together under the empathy-led language. And it's funny, I think I mentioned this to you when we initially spoke, that years ago I bought the URL for empath-led.com. I still own it. I actually just re-upped the domain for another year, refreshed the domain. I haven't done anything with it, but that's how close the idea of empathy leading anything happens is important to me. So I think that, and it is to you too. So
yeah,
here we are.
So you are the person who swept the empathy-led domain from under me.
I didn't know that that's what I was doing, but yes. And I'm happy to, because I think you'll do more with it than I will. If you still want it, it's yours.
Oh, I'll absolutely take you up on that offer. That's very, very kind and very generous of you to offer.
Yeah, it's yours.
All right. So maybe a good place for us to start is what do you mean when you say empathy-led?
Well, I mean that empathy, which is to me the ability to really inhabit the emotional state, the mindset, the experiences of another human being should be the point from which all decision making is made. And that's true from the way that I parent my kids, or I, you know, at least I try to do that, to the way that I have structure sort of relationships with my lives in my family, my broader family. I have 5 sisters, with my parents, with extended family, friends, and then also what I counsel clients to do around their business or brand decision making is that it's not you who you're making decisions for. You're not your audience. It's your audience is your audience, and the
Yeah.
best we can do um, is go beyond looking at sort of the demographics of who they are and really be able to empathize with them, to feel what they might feel in their experiences. And I think it's important to say that we lead with that, that it is led, that all relationships are led by that versus it's a component of it, because it puts human beings in focus and at the center of everything. And that's my, I guess if I had a personal philosophy, it would be that.
No, I love it. And as you already know, I deeply, deeply resonate with those ideas and with that philosophy. And I try to embody it in the way I lead with my relationships, in the way I lead in business, in the way I think about branding and marketing. And it makes sense that we are here today having this conversation.
Yep. Well, what I'm interested to know, like when you think of empathy led, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, for me, what I really intuitively understand is that whatever a business is trying to accomplish, whatever a business is trying to get, they only get if they successfully create value for somebody else, right? That profit and revenue are not really goals to be achieved, they are outcomes. They are a way you measure how effectively you have created value for your customers or for society at large. And that is how you get to capture some of that value that you have created. So for me, it naturally makes sense then that the focus shouldn't be on how can we be more profitable or increase our revenue, since that's an outcome. The focus should be on, like, what is the value that we are trying to create for the people that we seek to serve, or what is the value that we are trying to bring into society, knowing that that is the way we actually get to capture value. So for me, when I think about it beyond the human side, because I think it's just a good thing to do, but I also think it's very good for business. And then from an employee standpoint, like, if all you really cared about was to get the most out of your employees and to squeeze everything they had to offer, the only way you could do that is if you understood what makes them tick, what drives them, what hopes and dreams and fears and aspirations and limitations they have. Because only then can you get the best out of them to maximize productivity and then maximize profit. So when I think about empathy within the context of business, for me, it just is good for people, but it's also good for business. It just makes sense. It's such a practical notion to me that moves beyond just really looking at business from a human centered view and from a almost philanthropic sense of the term. But like for me, when I also think about it, I think about it, well, you only get paid if you have successfully created value for a group of people or for society. So you have to really spend and deploy and flex your empathy muscle to understand who those people are, to your point earlier, beyond the demographic markers, to understand how they make decisions, to understand how they organize their lives, to understand the trade-offs they are willing to make in an attempt to get what you have created for them, and to craft experiences that are easy and seamless and pleasant and surprising. You can only do that if you deeply understand who they are. And it helps to really care about them, because then you also are able to create magnificent experiences for them. And it really helps to really care about your employees, because then they too care about you and care about the cause and the mission, and bring their best on a daily basis. So that's how I think about it, in its not so succinct way.
Oh, but I think if you put your answer and my answer together, I think we have both the elevator pitch and the deeper treatise on it. And something that you just said, I believe that empathy as a term, as a concept, as an idea, has in business would have 5 years ago, 7 years ago, 10 years ago been dismissed as something mushy, been dismissed as something that belonged in HR, I think it would have been pigeonholed. What I have seen is that there is a greater understanding of everything that you just said, that the outcome is the money, the goal is fulfilling someone, fulfilling someone, and having them, creating a magnetic force that fulfills them, either to your own company, as an employer brand, or to your product, and your service. So it's been interesting to watch. I've been doing what I do. I love to use this term with my students, since the 1900s, which is true because I started in as a practitioner in 99. And but that's enough time. That's really, that's enough time to see change. And I feel lucky enough to be part of that, and to be part of these kind of conversations, where we see empathy really becoming to be understood to have business value. That said, I still think there's a long way to go.
Of course. So do you
Yeah.
think that people and leaders are more open to the idea because of COVID? Like, why? Why do you think we're seeing the change that we're seeing, and people being a little bit more receptive to that idea of empathy?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's hard to isolate any one variable like COVID, like sort of a changing political climate, not just in this country, but around the world, you know, socioeconomic forces globally, the the proliferation of social media, the connection, the greater connection of people, the greater globality of, that's probably not a word, but the
It is on
ability.
this show.
Is it? All right. So the globality that we have when we, in traveling and in connecting with new people or new markets, depending on how you look at it. So I think that, and then there was COVID also, and then there was the revolution um, around employees and employers, and the power of negotiations and balances that are still underway. So I think all of those came together to put humans at the heart of decision making. And one way that I've seen this, sort of in a way that we can quantify, is in the amount of interest, the amount of business press, the sort of rising importance of the idea of customer experience. And customer experience is really just the idea of how you are creating around your customer's needs versus how you're creating a thing and you hope your customer is going to come to it. And because customer experience, like, there's something like almost 70% of companies now are competing on customer experience alone. It's not about quality, service, price. It's really, what kind of experiences are you going to offer me? And because we're seeing that, and because we're seeing those who invest in great customer experiences rise and compete and win and become the darlings both of both brand and business performance, I think that has helped to drive this shift. I also think there's been, just generations are different. The millennials are different than Gen X, are different than boomers, and are different than Gen Z. And I don't like to put too much stock in just generational differences, but I do think there is a way that sort of a overriding outlook. And as more Gen Z rise up into the workplace who came of age during not just digital natives, but they came of age during the Great Recession and all these other impacts, which helped to shape them. They see things, they do things differently, and they make different demands, and they have different expectations. So I think it's been there. There are so many factors, but I'm glad to see it. I'm also I think there might be something um, also around the increasing empowerment of women in the workforce as well, where that, and I don't think empathy belongs to anyone or any gender at all. But the idea, especially from the employer brand standpoint, that women who have working mothers, for example, have different needs and different expectations. The more that we're able to listen to those groups of women, and the more we're responsive to them, the more empathy is sort of helps to become a guiding force, both from a business decision making standpoint, an employer decision making standpoint, and both together.
Yeah, I mean there are certainly massive changes in expectation from the consumer side, but also from employer side about really the role of society, the role of companies in society. Right? It used to be that it was enough for you to create jobs and pay your taxes, and you owe nothing else to society. But now, we are demanding that brands and companies insert themselves in important conversations around our culture, around society.
Yeah.
People are demanding a little bit more out of their job, right? There used to be a fine separation between personal aspirations and professional aspirations, but now these things are merging. They are bleeding into one another. Where on one side, it's not just I'm going to go and I'm going to do this job and I'm going to get paid, and then I'm going to figure out another way for me to be happy and fulfilled, right? I want my job and my profession and my career to be a source of happiness and fulfillment. And I think when you have somebody who has this kind of expectations about their work and how they choose to spend their time at work and where they work and how they contribute their talents and their gift to make a contribution to the world, it really applies pressure for leaders and companies to start enhancing and increasing the circle of responsibility around what is the purpose of a company. And I, for one, am very happy that we are at least having those conversations, because they are long overdue, for sure.
Yeah. And I think a lot about the idea um, of trust, and the trust that we have put in our institutions globally, and how we have gifted companies, we have gifted the private sector with with our trust more, to have a greater impact um, in all sorts of issues, social issues, issues around equity, environmental issues. All of these, we're looking for our companies to lead, and we trust them more when we do. And the benefit of that trust is that we support them more with our loyalty, with our dollars, etc. So it's been a very interesting time to see that shift. And then from a brand standpoint, really interesting in how we create brands that have that notion of empathy sort of built within them, and become a reflection of we're reflecting not just the company, really we're reflecting their customers, we're reflecting their markets, we're reflecting the world, because we want to see ourselves in the brands that we connect with.
Yeah. So, in this acknowledgement of the change in expectation, we've also seen company do a whole lot of purpose signaling, virtue signaling, in an effort to be responsive to the market. How do you advise your client at Adrenaline to really build a brand that embodies and that is a living, breathing organism of the things that they say they value and what they have chosen to be the purpose of their company.
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's really all we do at Adrenaline from when we are having conversations around brand and around how you position your brand. We happen to work with primarily financial institutions. Financial institutions they are banks, they are community banks, they're credit unions, fintechs, those that serve them. And the idea there are two ways that we talk about that. One is that you have to spend time and attention on identifying and communicating and then exemplifying the values, your values, the ideals to which you aspire, what you believe in, what connects all of you. And so values become less of something that's on your annual report or on your boardroom wall, and they become lived, actionable, actionable North Stars for how you show up in the world. The second thing is that and this is, I hate the word authenticity because I feel like it's lost authenticity, but that the idea that as an organization, as a company, as a brand, you tell the truth, and you tell the truth about who you are. And the more you tell the truth about who you are and what you believe in and what you stand for, the more you're going to attract people who believe in what you believe and stand for what you stand for and are attracted to that. And it's okay to not be, you're not for everyone. Your brand or you have the ability to craft and position a brand that is going to create the connections for the customers that matter most to you. And having that kind of abundance mindset that it's okay that you don't have to be everything to everyone. And in fact, your brand will fail if you try to be everything to everyone. Having that real values-based, purpose-based brand that then guides all of your decision-making forward, which then helps you to avoid the types of virtue signaling, purpose signaling, greenwashing that customers are hip to. People, we can sniff it out a mile away when it is words and not actions. When it's something that is, it feels like it's something that you have to do instead of something, meaning communicating around any type of purpose. You can tell when it comes out of guidance from a consultant versus something that's inherent to who you are and how you do business. So I think that there are like those two levers that we pull, but it really begins with the idea of defining those values that are then going to lead your company and then ultimately your brand forward.
No, I love that. I mean, I think there is something to be said about really spending the time and investing resources to do some soul searching within a company. One of our mission actually is to help companies find their soul, which is the truest expression of who they are and the contribution they want to make in the world. And I think, and I'm sure you see it all the time, there is something super powerful, magical even, that happens once a company has tapped into that. And when they have found a way to operationalize those values and different ways to bring those values and that purpose to life through everything that they do. I think it just shifts the mood within the company. It changes the way they think about business. It changes the kind of opportunities that they see in the market when they even redefine themselves away from what they do, but and more around why they exist, right? They begin to see opportunities to live that purpose through other avenues and other products and other service that was close to them prior to engaging into that journey of self-inquiry and discovery. And that's personally is my favorite part of the whole thing, right? To really be able to serve as a scribe and to hear a founder or a company say, yes, that's us, that's exactly us, and you've captured it so clearly, and now I feel like it puts us in a position to be able to connect and communicate it so well with the people that we are trying to have relationship with, and the people that we seek to serve.
Yep. Yeah, we call it, I've used the term soul. We also often call it your DNA.
Hmm.
And it is just, it is the immutable, unchangeable, enduring truth of who you are and what and why you do what you do. And just like our own DNA um, sort of is expressed in lots of different ways. We can't see the double helix, but we can see its expression everywhere that we exist in the world. Same thing for a company, its values, its purpose, and ultimately its position, the unique idea that it holds in the minds and hearts of everyone it's trying to reach, inside and outside.
Yeah. So
It's my part too. Yeah, go ahead.
for those who are still on the fence about this idea and consider it to be just a whole mumbo jumbo kumbaya type thing that really has no place in business, can you make a business case for this?
I can. And what I have found is a person who has that level of skepticism is most often moved not by the romance of my words or my business case, by data.
Hmm.
And that's what we rely on there. And as you might imagine, bankers are not those who are sort of, and we work with wonderful, wonderful, deep, caring, uh, purpose-led clients. But as a whole, the banking industry is numbers driven.
Hmm.
That's what we do. So the case that we make is twofold. One is that there is a very proven, and over the course of decade, well, a little over a decade, of tracking brands that are that have a powerful position that is based around their purpose and values, that is consistently communicated out, outperform their peers by a significant margin. And this is on the Morgan Stanley Consumer Index, tracks brand strength and brand health. Interbrand does it every year also. And what's interesting is that the delta between brands that are uh, that that communicate more on features, benefits, rates, prices, and those that communicate around who they are, their purpose, an idea that they're bringing to the world or to society, that delta has grown and grown and grown by 2 percentage points, 5 percentage points, 7 percentage points a year. So there's that piece of data. The other is that we at Adrenaline have tracked the performance of brands that we have taken through rebrand. And the rebrand process, as you know, has a lot to do. The whole first half of it is about that idea of the strategy, the positioning, the soul searching, the finding, the defining of that, and then creating a path forward to express it, both at retail, across marketing, internally in your own culture. From the time of the launch of that rebrand to, usually it takes 2 or 3 years. We also see growth from any way you look at it: customer growth, asset growth, CAGR growth, that is far outside of the industry average. So the business case that I would make is like, don't take my word for it.
Right.
I'm a practitioner of it and a believer for it, but the numbers don't lie. Um, what I'm also keeping a close eye on, and actually just had a conversation with a client about this today, is that there is the beginning whisperings of how purpose and purpose-driven brands are maybe not what consumers are as interested in as we once thought, and that purpose is a part of the brand story, but it's not the entirety of the brand story, which is an intuitive idea. So we what I am interested to see is that maybe we've overcorrected on the sort of leading all with purpose, and there needs to be a little bit more of a balance. Um, I'm keeping my mind open, sort of agnostic to what the data says,
Yeah.
as we look at this, but I'm interested and paying close attention.
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, the idea of purpose being this grandiose thing that is, curing cancer or saving the dolphin or saving the planet is something that just isn't realistic for everyone to have.
Yeah,
And for
yeah,
me, I just think that fundamentally the purpose of a company is to enhance the human experience. And when you really think about a hammer, when you really need it, when you are trying to build a crib, when you are trying to fix something in your house, when you think about the role of that trivial instrument in that moment in your life to help you make progress in your life, it has purpose. So for me, that's how I think about purpose. I think about it at times in very simple practical ways, in that this thing has enhanced my human experience in a very small practical way. And then of course there is the kind of purpose that just advances societies forward, changes the statu quo, or really
yeah,
redefine big ideas and society as large. So for me, I always challenge clients to think about it in those terms: is what is the fundamental way in which you want to enhance the human experience of those you seek to serve? And I think by looking at it like that, we begin to see how, in theory, every single company has a purpose that is not about making money, which was my initial point. Like, if your point is to help people fix stuff, then that's your purpose. And if you do that well, then you are rewarded with revenue and profit. That's how you get to capture some of the value that you have created into the market, right? And then when you are able to then tell a beautiful story that meets people where they are and is a true reflection. I'm going to take the crib example again. Like, a hammer can be a hammer, but when you tell a story about a father or mother or somebody using a hammer to build a crib for their first kid, like, it adds an emotional dimension to something that otherwise would just be a tool that no one really thinks can drive emotions. And I think when you put the product in its proper context, instead of, we're now going to use a hammer and we're going to talk about ending racism, or right, like, it's out of context. When you figure out a way for your product to be put in proper context to drive those ideas, I think there's something really, really powerful there that almost any brand can tap into. So for me, I continue to be a fierce advocate of purpose, but not the kind of purpose that everyone think about, which is let's cure cancer, or let's reduce plastic in the environment, all of which are super super important. And I'm so glad they are amazing entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs that are working toward solving some of those problems. But we also need to build cribs, right?
yeah, yep. Well, it brings up for me what you were just saying, is this idea that, and totally agree about the context and how the context changes everything, but also the most personal is the most universal. And so
Mm.
when we tell the stories about the father and mother building the crib, when we tell the stories about um, the daughter's first dance and how she gets ready using a bar of soap or whatever those things are, um, it is tapping into to universal human emotions. And the way that we do that is through stories. That's
Yeah.
it. Tell stories to one another. And we have, and those stories are story, oral stories, written stories, filmic stories, meme stories. Now
Yeah.
they're all, but it's all really just the power of storytelling, which is really what I think of when I think, and I talk to clients about this a lot. Your brand is your story. That's what we're
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah.
It's the way you tell the story of who you are. I wake up every day excited, uh, to excited to dive in to do whatever it is, because it is a new ways of telling stories. Often when our clients' stories are the same, every bank on earth sells checking accounts, every credit union on earth has auto loans to offer. How do you tell the story differently, in a way that's meaningful, in a way that can only ever be about them?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. Now you said something earlier, and I think that's even the point that you're still trying to make here. I think at times we forget that the functional benefit of a product or a service isn't the only type of benefit that clients and customers are seeking. That yes, I go to a bank because I wanted to have a safe, secure banking. I can open a saving account, a checking account, and all that. But customers also have transactional benefits that they are seeking, like the experience of doing and banking with you also matters as much as making sure that I have a safe and secure savings and checking account. And then the aspirational benefits that we are seeking almost with every product as well matter, right? So maybe I just opened my first saving account because I'm expecting. There's an aspirational benefit that then transcend the functional benefit of what a savings account is. And when we understand that customers do not only have functional, utility driven benefits that they are seeking or needs, that they also have transactional benefit, which is the experience of acquiring what they are seeking, and aspirational benefits, which taps into higher desire and needs and emotion, then you begin to see how there is room, a lot more room for innovation than there is if you are only focused on your product or service. Because how much better is your savings account is going to be? How much better is your checking account? How much room for innovation in that is there versus the kind of room that you get improving the customer experience or
Right.
telling emotional stories and aspirational stories when everyone within your industry is worried about the functional benefits of a bank account or a checkings account, right? There's so much opportunity once we understand the full human in
Yep.
in the complexity and the layers that make us who we are as people. So for me, again, to the question that started us all is, that's also what I mean when I say empathy led, is that in your deeper understanding of people and human beings, their wants, their needs, and the cost that they are willing to incur to do business with you, which are not only monetary, right? It costs us time, energy, it costs us emotional stamina to do business with you. Like the fear and certainty of, is my money safe over there, is a cost that I have to take in consideration if I'm going to open, if I'm going to choose who I'm going to bank with. Right. So when you understand all those benefits and the cost that people are incurring to do business with you, it just changes the way you look at the whole thing and how you approach it and how you speak to it. Right.
Yeah, it's so interesting what you were just saying about the role of emotion in both decision making, but also in money. Especially money is very emotional, and even though it seems like it would be entirely sort of rational decision making, who has the best rates, for me, really, where am I going to get the best um, possible deal on my loan? And this is true for business customers as well as individuals like you and me. Money is actually highly driven by emotion. It taps into our deepest sort of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, our
Yeah.
deep, or security first, and then as we rise up through those higher, more aspirational needs. And something that's so humbling to me that I think about a lot is that 95% of our decision making around brands, or really anything, is driven by our limbic brain, which is our oldest, our most ancient brain before we even had language. Um, so as much as we like to think of ourselves navigating the world as these utterly rational creatures, always making decisions that are in the best interest, that are always uh, weighing costs and benefits equally, really it's our lizard brain. We're driven by our emotion, and that doesn't mean that that rational benefits don't play a role. It just means that, like, know what leads, and that is very often emotional, and it's often what we say about how brands, you have a gut feeling
Yeah.
about a brand. You make
Yeah.
a gut reaction, you have that feeling, which is really just another way of saying your limbic brain has, like, made that decision for you, and you can't express why, so you feel it as a gut feeling. Yes for me, no, not for me. So I think about that phenomenon a lot, in that um, all the levers that we can pull in storytelling, all the ways that we can position brands, products, services, and their role in the world, all the great stories that we tell have to be able to pull the lever of emotion, to connect emotionally. And the only way you do that is by understanding the emotions of the people that you are trying to reach, and um, walking a mile, 5 miles, 15 miles in their shoes, which is um, I think just a great, it's a real joy to be a human, to be able to do that.
Yeah. So
Wonderful.
we've already
Talking.
talked about stories quite a bit in this thing, and I can't help but think about how your background as a journalist and in poetry must give you an unfair advantage over the rest of us. Have you been able to reflect in how that background has really positioned you in the perfect place as a brand strategist and brand builder?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, journalism is just the act of observation, and the act of observation, or it's not the act of, but it's the seeking of truth.
Mm.
It is the seeking of the story. It is the search for objective facts that back up what that story is. So not bringing your own preconceived notions into it. And if there is one thing that I want to do better than anything else in my life, and it's to listen, and it's
Yeah.
to really listen to what people are saying, and to not think about the next thing you're going to say, or think of that you know what they're going to say, but to listen, and to reflect on that. So journalism gives just the training and the tools to be able to do that in a way that is sort of structured and disciplined. Poetry is, to me, about the use of language to define the essence of a thing,
Mm.
and to be utterly essential, and to kind of strip away all of the um, anything extra, but to really define what the essence of a thing is, which is ultimately what I think of as the function of brand, finding a brand purpose. It is finding, through searching, through observation, through listening, the precious gem of truth that exists within a human being, an organization, a collection of human beings, what they're doing, and then being able to tell that truth in a way that polishes that gem and gets down to the essence of it. So I actually think that um, I I don't know that I could build brands if I didn't have those tools in my toolkit in order to do so.
Yeah. So we've been talking for like 35 minutes, 30 minutes now, and I just realized that I haven't even given my audience the opportunity to get to know you as a person, as a human being. And I'm always fascinated about the pieces of our life that we choose to stitch together to tell a coherent story about ourselves. So help us understand the piece of your life puzzle that could best help us understand who you are and the path that led you here.
Wow, that's a hard question to answer because there's a lot of ways to do that. I'm going to start out, but I'll focus on two.
Okay.
One is that I I come from a big family. I have five sisters. I and and the reason that that is relevant, I'm the second oldest, is that I have always seen myself as part of a whole. I'm not, I exist in community, and I exist as part of a sort of an organism or an organization outside of myself, and also to navigate life with five siblings, five sisters. You have to be empathetic. You have to be able to
Yeah.
see others' eyes, um, and connect in that way. And so that's a big part of it. The second thing is that I have a big family myself. I have six kids,
Mm.
and so the parenting six children has helped me to, and every one of them is a universe unto themselves. They are their own universe, and it's, a gift, a joy, a challenge, a struggle to understand who each one of them are and meet them where they are with the needs that they have. And I am by no means do it perfectly, but I think that that those two things are essential about me. And I also make no apologies about being a mom, having a lot of kids with my clients. I actually think it makes me a better practitioner, of the work that I do, and also able um, to be able to balance a lot of sort of competing priorities on any given day,
Yeah.
in leading my teams. So there's that. The second thing is that, um, I love and have always loved, a defining feature of my life has been music. My dad is a musician. I grew up in just immersed in music. I play music. I sing. I also have, uh, I my first job out of school was working at a magazine called Jazz Is, which was all about jazz. I mean, dream job to, listen to music and write about it. And
Wow.
so I think what I love about that, and the way that it has connected to sort of my overall narrative, is that I there is like beauty and art all around me, expressed all around me, and I'm very moved by it. And I love the idea that that you can write about music, you can express a feeling through images, you can take language and use it um, to capture a sense or a feeling. And so I love the idea. Part of branding is a science, and part of it is art. And
Absolutely.
I couldn't do either. So I think that the art part of it is, really inherent to who I am. And I like having fun in what I do, and music is like makes, music is fun to me. It gives energy and life and all of those things. And if we're not having fun what we're doing, like what are we here for? What are we doing
Yeah.
with our life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to zero in on this idea of growing up with five sisters or being one of five, and then yourself having six children. How do those two pieces inform your leadership?
That's a good question. Well, um, my leadership is driven by really two things. One is, and I think we talked about this, is the idea of listening first. Because I am always more interested in understanding how anyone that I'm leading, and when in the ways that I think of any kind of hierarchical relationship, it's really the idea that I am coach, I am mentor, I am coach. I have this
Ah,
person's best interest in mind. Um, I don't think of myself as a boss at all. And so I lead with listening, and I match my approach in a sort of a customized way to everyone that I am fortunate enough to lead, which is exactly like having um, many different children, different genders, different ages. You have to sort of listen first, be very humble about it, and define it in that way. The second thing is that I have um, one way that I coach people into sort of becoming the best of what they can do, unlocking their potential, is have I don't offer advice until I've asked them. If they come to me with an issue, a question, a problem, I'd say, well, what are you thinking about that?
Mm.
How are you, tell me how you would solve that. On the top of your mind? And really, that's just letting them know they have the answer themselves. They just sometimes need to be given um, an ear to sort of talk it through with someone else, or the confidence that they need to sort of unlock that. And very often, just little bits of guidance can help them get to the final answer. But usually, I believe that the answer is inside of them,
Yeah.
which is less to do about the five sisters and much more to do about the sort of the parenting style. Is that ultimately, and it's the heartbreak of parenting, because my oldest went off to college this past year,
Oh,
is that if you're really successful at parenting, then they don't need you anymore. They
no.
leave. They are their own person, and that's how you know you've gotten it right, when they are ready to fly, utterly self-sufficient. So, and that's my goal for everyone that I lead, is that ultimately they leapfrog into their own leadership.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't have defined empathetic leadership better than like this answer you just gave me, right? This idea of listening first, this idea of understanding that a one size fit all is a disaster, because you're dealing with different people with different wants and needs and personalities and challenge and level and stories, and that unless you understand them as human beings, you are not going to be able to help them, to support them. And then the idea of empowering, that's what a leader does, right? Empowering you to find the answer and to be brave enough to ask for help when you feel like you need it, and to be somebody who was once in your charge is ready to fly their own wings, that you give them the encouragement and the push that they need to really leave the nest, instead of feeling betrayed, as sometimes leaders do, right? That after everything I've invested in you and given you, how can you leave? But what I heard you say is, no, if I've done my job well, then this is supposed to happen. We're supposed to arrive at this moment when you feel like you are ready to leave the nest, and I'm proud of you, for
Yeah.
finally getting there. It's beautiful. I love it. I love it. So we are unfortunately coming to the end of this conversation, and it was so good. I loved being able to geek out about branding and marketing in ways that I don't always have the opportunity to, because when you're talking to people outside the field, or people that do not share the same mindset, it feels like, what are you talking about? You guys are selling stuff. What is all this
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
enhancing the human experience and emotion and love? No, you're selling stuff, right? So to be able to have this conversation about just how deep and profound branding and building brands and building relationship with customers and employees can be, if you want it to be, I'd really enjoyed it. And again, the last piece around leadership and how to empower people to be the best version of themselves, I think for me is the essence of empathy-led leadership. And I'm so grateful for your time, so grateful for your contribution to creating a world with more empathetic brands and more empathetic leaders and organizations. And in that, and in many ways, we are on similar path and similar missions. So thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for creating a platform for conversations like this about empathy. This was a wonderful sort of deep down reflection of beliefs, which I think is important to take out our beliefs every once in a while and really examine them. Think, do I still believe this? So these kind of things help me to do that. So thank you. I loved it. Anytime.
I loved it too. Thank you so much again, Juliet. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I'm sure this is not the last conversation we have.
Yes.